Good morning. I'd like to talk to you about 360-degree panoramas for facilities management and for designers. My name is Max Drake. Let's get into it. For designers, one of the things I have an issue is I had for years is that I go on site, take lots of photos, and always the bit that I wanted was just off screen as far as the images went. It was just somewhere just to the side, and you thought, that's frustrating. I thought about using videos, but taking our video around is also quite cumbersome, and also you have to kind of play the video through all the time to get to the bit that you actually want, which is a bit frustrating. And then I came across the 360 panoramas, which I think are quite great. If you had them in their raw format as they actually sit on your computer, if you just open up the file like that, they've actually got this distortion and they're very hard to read. So you actually need a viewer to actually view them. So one of the tools that I use is this Photosphere Viewer by Jeremy Helene, which is a free Photosphere Viewer, and you download the software on your computer to actually view it. You actually hook it up with your actual process yourself. There are some online viewers, one's called 360 Viewer or something, and another one's a Google one. There are other processes. Matterport do one and Cuepix do one. Matterport need a special camera. They actually make a sort of a doll's house where they have the information in, and it's quite sophisticated to the point where you can actually do measurements within the space. It almost makes like a point cloud. The Cuepix one uses any old 3D camera, but the storage space, the free service that they have, is inadequate to actually do anything. At its best, by the look of it, it's similar to the Matterport one, but you need quite a lot of storage space on theirs for the actual images that you do. I playing with their free one, the Cuepix one, and found it very frustrating to use. One of the reasons why I kind of came onto this is when I was working with Wellington City Council, they were doing some survey of existing buildings, so they were getting surveyors to go into each particular building, and they were photographing each room. So they had a little iPad and they took a photo of each wall, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then they took a picture of the floor and a picture of the ceiling to get an indication of the quality of the finishes in those spaces. That works in a reasonable sized room okay, but in a very small room, all you do is just capture a tiny piece of wall, so it's not that effective for those. Whereas the 3D panoramas can be quite effective for, in that sort of situation. There is an evolution to this process that I went through when I first started. I first initially had a camera, and the camera that I had was this Theta one, and I think the image size is about 5 megabytes. Then I actually went on to get this LG camera, and I'll just flick over to here, and this is the LG camera that I use. The one wonderful thing that I find about it, it's got a little micro SD card that you can put in it, so you can quickly switch it out and put it into your camera. There are a lot of other ones on the market now. These are tiny wee things and very, very light. So I use it on a setup with a selfie stick sometimes, which gets me around the space. They do have apps that you can use on your phone, so you can go out of a room or a space and take the photo and then go back in. The actual cameras themselves actually have 2 fisheye lenses. So what you find sometimes on the photos, there's a sort of a change in color. If we just go back to that basic one there, you'll see there's a sort of a fuzziness through about this point here, and that's where the seam is, where the 2 fisheyes is trying to join the 2 images together. So let's get on and actually have a look at some of these ones. My creative.cf website has a few articles on the process that I've done in exploring 360 panoramas, if you're interested in that. This is the first one that I did, where I used a 2D plan PDF, and I actually made a clickable link inside it. So when you clicked on the link, it took you to a URL, and then the URL was actually the 3D PDF that you could look at. This process, you actually had to go back to go back to this point here to choose another space. The other thing which I found with this, and in this one here is quite handy, and my first start of it was to use an iframe on a website, so you can zoom in. You know, it's quite useful to see as an indication of a space. Not only is it 360 panorama that way, but you can actually look at the ceiling. It's a bit of a nuisance, that is. I'll do it on another one. If we just go and click on another space here and go in, you see it takes a little while to load because it's loading over the web. And here you've got the ceiling that you can see, and this has got Pinex tiles on it, and you can see the floor. There is a little bit of a mark where the actual camera stand is and the actual camera lens, so you see this sort of a flare through here, which is the two images trying to join themselves together. When I was actually looking at, they seem to be taken off the 360 panoramic cameras, and there's a lot more on the market from say a couple of years ago. So the first one that I actually had was using the 3D PDF. Sorry, let's go back to wherever that one there was. No. And so I had the 2D PDF. What happens in the 2D PDF is when you click on the PDF, you're actually in a PDF viewer. It then takes you into the browser. So if you've got the PDF open, it sort of clicks into a different space to go and do it. You can actually download that image. And this one here is quite good, is that the actual images are linked onto a server. Having them on the server is a good thing and a bad thing. You can take that, you can send that, email that PDF anywhere, and somebody could just click on those images and they'll go onto the server. So that's quite handy. The one thing with having them on the server, with the LG one here, this image size is 30 megapixels. So it's a 5 megabyte file size. So they're quite big to download over the internet. One of the ways that I was thinking of doing this was, or the next iteration from this actual basic process that I used here. So here, just going back into the PDF, I can actually go and use a hyperlink here. So inside Adobe Acrobat, I do a link. I just give a square here, and it says a visible rectangle and a color, let's say purple, through there, and make a thick line. And what link action do I want if you click on that space? It can be a custom link, and I'm just going to open a web page. Then you actually add in a URL here, so we'll just go back into the browser and we'll just select that one there, and we'll go back into that program, and we can go now. If I just hover over that image or click on it, oops, it's not doing it for some reason. If I click on that image there, and there's the little wheel going, you'll see it'll go and open the web page. But this is the issue with that I'm in a PDF viewer and then it's opening in the browser, which can be a little bit frustrating because you may not be aware that it's actually operating. So you might be clicking on this 3 or 4 times and you end up opening 3 or 4 tabs, which is not really what you actually want. Open web link in browser. Go ahead. Let's just see if that does it. So it's actually opening up that website there. So that's all it is. It's nothing too complicated. The actual software as well, when I was looking at the software for doing this, it was I was linking back to the original website of and you can just get, I think it's CDN or something like that, where you use the other links that they have to here. So I was going to his website and downloading the latest JavaScript and CSS files. What actually have changed after when I played with it a few years ago, I went to go back to play with it again. I found all of my links had all broken because they'd updated the software and it didn't work with the setup that I actually had. So I had to rebuild it all completely. So the next time I actually went into here, I actually went through and in the panorama now, I actually, if I just use this one here as an example, I bring down all the code and I just put it onto my as a subdirectory as to where I actually had my images, so that if they update the code, it doesn't affect what I've got here. These ones here still operate fine. So that was a learning as far as updating services and using CDN links for those. This particular tool is really good. Inside it, you can use hyperlinks. So if you click on an object, you can either get information coming through here, you can have a map link. Basically, it's almost opening a little mini web page which you can put code and stuff on. You can put hover spots on it. You can put links through to somewhere else. So here is somebody saying, oh, well, I can link through to something else on side that. So it's a really powerful tool, and it's the only one that I found which is free. A lot of the other ones let you do the 360 panorama, but when you try linking images together, it doesn't particularly work. So at the end of that, we have the 2D PDF with a hyperlink that takes us through to a view on a web browser. That was a little bit unsatisfactory to me, so that the next part of the process that I looked at was looking at putting it all onto one site. So I actually had the panorama, and I had, and I better just do a little refresh on that. So this is another example that I studied. Oh, sorry. The next one which I found that it was very slow downloading over the server. So the next thing that I actually tried doing, and I haven't got the example open here, is that I had a red box and a blue box. The blue box, I think the red box was for the low. What I ended up doing was a low resolution and a high resolution for the same space, just so that you could click on one and quickly open it up, so you can download over the internet and open up a smaller file size, which would be a lot more granular, so not that accurate to see, so that you could quickly skip through the spaces to see which space you actually need. Then you can actually open up the large file and wait for that one to download. So I thought that would be more useful if you were using a mobile device or something like that. You don't want to be waiting there for ages trying to click on all of these high resolution images, when all you want to do is flick through low resolution images and then find the one that you want to actually do the inspection. So that was a theory that I did. So I ended up, if you saw in that file directory size that I came through there, I had high resolution images and I had low resolution images. This is not related to this particular one here. I think it's related to this one here, where I had low resolution images, and if I look at the file sizes on here, they're about 771 megabytes, and then I actually had high resolution images, and if we look at the file sizes on here, they're about 5 megabytes. So some are about 0.7, some are 5, so that you can open up ones quickly, and then you can open up. So I ended up with, and I think I actually have this example here on the house plan and on the site plan, where I had the high resolution ones, so this is, and the low resolution ones. So you could quickly click between the ones that you wanted to see, visualize what you wanted to see, then go and actually open up the big file size and wait for that. That worked over a browser, and it was really the idea of somebody going into site. You could actually just email them the PDF, they could actually look, or they could actually upload off a scan and load that PDF and then just go through the spaces so that they could get a quick view of what they actually needed. So all you need to do is actually transfer them you just needed to transfer them the actual PDF file, and because it was linking to a server, they always work, so it doesn't matter where those images were. I did find it slow though, and to a certain extent a lot of people are using it for an internal operation. So the next process that I used was to combine it all onto into a browser situation. So here I actually have the ground floor and the first floor of this particular building as plans, and I have a hover feature. Whereas if there's an image attached to a panorama attached to something, you can click on that image. So if I click on that image, it just fires me straight to the panorama. Now the nice thing with this is that you can have them as a subdirectory. In this particular example, sorry, where's that image that I was using there? In that particular example, a lot of the images are all sitting in the same space, so they're all subdirectories of that. So if you're actually opening up these large files on your computer and they're just a subdirectory, it goes very fast. It's only over the server where the big images start slowing down. So this one here is an example of one that I did of which does hyperlinks as well. So this one here, I can click on this one and it'll go through that door to the next space. So instead of navigating via the plan, I can navigate via the panoramas to explore, do I want one outside, or what have I got in this particular room, and do I want to go into here? Now again, this is a good example of a very small space. This space is only about 1 meter wide, yet you can actually see the finish on all of the walls and the ceiling and a bit of the floor. You are a little bit obscured on by the floor by that, but you can zoom in. And also the other thing with this is this file is actually downloadable. You can make it full screen as well inside this particular app. So it's quite useful for doing that. So this was an example which I use where everything is just in the browser. You just click on one of the pages and then it just feeds you all the way through. The next iteration that I went through was to actually go through, and I did one for as an example for very quickly for a person working in facilities management to kind of give him a demonstration. And what I use is I use two types. I use the panorama. So if I click on that one, the blue ones are the panorama because they just had to have a location of where they start from, and there's the panorama looking from there. It's a little bit overcast. And if I just go back to that Sandflow plan, and then I just have a normal photo, and the reason that has the arrow on it is because it points as a direction that it's going in. So there's the actual image itself, and I just use the browser to try and zoom in on, but it doesn't really do that much of a zoom. I should do something about being able to download those photos. I can go back to that. I also have another one where I just walk down a corridor. These ones I just took off bat. I actually just have I handheld and I just walk through. So there you can see me in these actual images, whereas the other ones I was using an app and I was outside the room and using a tripod to do it. But it gives you quite an interesting bit of geometry. The one thing that I find quite interesting on this particular photo is they got the dry riser coming through here up the stairwell, but they've got two lights on the landing. I don't know why two lights. That for that scenario, one would have been more than adequate. But you can see this sort of conduit coming through there. You can see this sort of break line where this LG camera is the jointing of the two fisheyes. If we go back to block C, we can go further up to another one. Useful, you can get all of the door numbers, you can see what hardware is actually on there depending on your setup. I tend to have the camera, and I think the one slightly raised above my head that I use. Normally if I'm using a tripod, I try and put the tripod at eye level, about 1700mm off the ground. That way it sort of seems very realistic. If you have it too high, you know, it's not the natural eye path that you actually have, but it does give an indication of where it is and how it relates to other ones as well. So this one I could have linked images across to each other, and in fact on this particular example, one of the ones which I was doing as a quick demonstration to say what I could do, the people went for Matterport, I identified a couple of failures. It's actually just a recently refurbished social housing project, and the prep on the paint here was quite poor. It was sort of identified at that time as some remedial work that needed to be done, and it took a little while, but it was actually repaired later on. The other one that I actually found on that one, sorry if I go back to site plan, is when I was looking on this one particular point here, is that we ended up identifying a bit of efflorescence. So there was there was an existing window. You can sort of see a very granular sort of shape through there, and there's efflorescence coming through. So somehow water's got into the mortar, and then the salts out of the mortar are just draining down on the outside as well. But that's actually a level that's easily maintained and just tidied up to keep the area tidy. Here's one, so it gives an indication and it gives an idea of the site fencing. You can get an awful lot of that. This was done on an overcast day, and that's one of the issues with the cameras. You normally need a reasonable amount of lighting to get a good accuracy and good quality. You can actually just leave this, and you can actually set the speed that you want this rotation to actually occur, or you can stop it or start it. You can download the file. if there's any hyperlinks within there, it'll tell you where those markers are. So it has a list of the ones inside that flat. So that was the next iteration of the process. And the third iteration that I went through after that, or fourth really, with the second one being the low resolution and high resolution over the browser, which is one solution that can be done. And the next legend is that I ended up automating the process. You don't actually click on the images themselves. You end up clicking on, if I go into any of these actually, let's go and find one. I'll go into the Kotu Flats one. If we go into one of these, you actually click on a bit of HTML. So in the HTML file, one, it gives the title of what the file is called and which one it relates to, so you can see your project number. So that's just on your tab, you'll see these ones here, or I don't think I did it on those ones, but with if I just go back to that one, so here you can see the Kotu 10 or whatever one. If I go onto the site plan, it gives an indication of which ones you're actually looking at. The other thing that it's doing as well is that it's calling a whole lot of JavaScript code, and I've minified a lot of those codes just so that they're running a lot faster, and I've made them relative path to that image, so therefore they're just looking where the code is, so that I can actually have the latest code. This map highlight is the one which does the hover dots that you see, so that you're knowing on the other one. So it's got style sheets and it's got JavaScript that it's calling. And the other one down below is that it's actually calling the file. And through here, somewhere, it's calling, that's the help file, and the other ones somewhere along here it's actually calling the one file which it's doing, and I can't quite relate to that. These ones here are the clickable links. So this one here is the home one, which actually has the links to all of the other panoramas that you would click on. So if I was actually, and they're all linked to the other one. So this is the Kotu 13 one that we're doing. So if I click on one, if you see that, it's actually saying on that image, this is where you're supposed to locate to click to this panorama. I think I've just said click to go to panorama. I could actually describe which panorama it's going to or what it's doing, and I've just used a Google map here. The other one that I've done with this is because it'll be working within a team area that other people in the company can get access to. I've given a help file explaining how the whole structure works. There is a little bit of a challenge, Internet and Chrome, Firefox and Chrome. In Chrome won't let you go and view from the browser a file. You see, this is not going to a web page. This is going to a file on my computer. Chrome doesn't, as a preset, allow you to go and look at a file, which is what that one there is doing. So allow file access from files to Chrome. So you actually need to set that up. So I actually have a little batch file which allows that to be triggered through. The nice thing with this is that you can actually put all of this onto a stick. So you can transfer it over and somebody else can use it. To automate and to actually write the script for this, I ended up using PyCharm, and it was done in Python. Oh, sorry, JetBrains PyCharm, the community edition, which is a free one. And then I used just an Excel spreadsheet, or which actually was just a CSV, to list all of the names that I actually wanted to call the things and to go and get the file sizes. So taking the camera just gives numbers, so you actually have to go and re-edit the numbers of those images of which ones you want to call them, and I usually call them by room just so that they actually have a sort of a sense to them. and if they had a room number, I'd just use a room number if I'd coded it to a plan. And if you didn't, then you could actually, if there were external ones, then you could actually just give them numbers, which is what I'd done on linking to the plan. So there's a number of ways that you can process this, but to actually go through and get these hot link points through here, you actually have to go into open this up within to get the point where this clickable point actually lands on the door or something like that. You actually have to open up those images in if we just open that up there, edit with paint. Where's open with? Open with paint. When we open this with paint, what it's actually looking for in the image is the location. So if I go and hover over this window here, it's not that clear, but you'll actually see the coordinates. Now the coordinates are weird because normally we think of from the bottom left hand corner, X is to the right and Y is up the screen. With images, it's the top left hand corner, so Y is downwards and X is across. So you actually have to find the actual point there. So that one there's 2406 across by 1070 on the image. Sometimes the image sizes are too big, and one of the things which I actually found that made it easier to work on was to scale the image to a size which was easily to round, so that you were working on a rounded aspect of that. So in the code for these points here, you'll see I'm actually having to give coordinates of where those hot points are. So this is where you click on that image, and that's the size of the dot, the red dot that you get on the image that I've got there. So when you click on there, it's saying go and see that, and that's where the circle is, and then when you click on it, that will actually take you through, and I've got an opacity and things, but that's to do with that particular one. But when you've actually got those hot points on there, you've actually got to use those coordinates as well. So once you've set them up, it's one of those things, once they're set up, they're set up. The other thing as well is that you've captured the state of a property or the condition of the state, as in walls and everything, as a snapshot in time. So you can see what the quality of the space was at a particular point in time. So if you're looking at a tenancy arrangement or something like that, you can go through and capture all of those images. You actually have those photos all the way through there. And the one thing it doesn't do is, it's in this basic method here, is it doesn't allow for dimensions, which is, but it's very, very quick to do. So one of the things is that if you actually have maintenance people going through and fixing something in a property, you can actually take a panorama at that point in time. So over time, if things are worked on through a property, you can actually keep a running record of later images coming through. The actual image, the photos, the LG camera itself, it hasn't got a price on here, but it's about 300 New Zealand dollars. So it's not really that expensive. And there are a lot more out there, and there's some very expensive ones, but well worth an investment in my opinion. And the way of setting it up, it did take me a little while to set up doing the panoramas, and now I've actually got both systems a bit more smoother as to whether you want to use it over a web browser or whether you want to have them local on your own server or LAN, or actually have them in a flash drive. I've got the processes a lot more streamlined to make them a lot more efficient, but a very handy tool in my opinion. I hope that's been of interest to you. Thank you very much for watching.